All right, it's 6 o'clock and we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm sure that people will maybe join us in person, maybe online. No, that's perfect. No, that's where I was going anyhow. So thanks for those of you who are joining us. We have 4 people in the audience this evening. I'm not seeing anyone online yet. So here's a little welcome, just real quick. For those of you that weren't here last time, which I'm not sure, was anyone here the very first meeting we had? Great, thank you. We're just going to go around, introduce ourselves. If you can come up to the mic, let us know your name, your KSD affiliation, your parents, you're a community member. And then why do you want to be a part of this work? And what do you hope to gain from this work as well? So if you could share that with us, we'll all do introductions. And then I'm going to run through the slides that we shared at the first meeting, just as a quick reminder, and then we'll jump into this evening's work. So you can start introductions off up here. Raul, if you want to start.
Yes, my name is Raul Perangao. I'm the Executive Director of Finance.
Kyle Olson, Director of Technology.
Brett Scribner, the Assistant Director of Capital Projects.
Wade Behringer, Deputy Superintendent. And just so you know, Dave Buzzard is out, as well as Gordon Cook, so they're not joining us this evening. Who'd like to be the first to introduce themselves? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Carla Lance. I am a KSD school bus driver. I live in the Kent School District. I have a daughter that teaches at one of our Kent elementary schools, a daughter that graduated last year, and a son that is still at Kentwood. I want to be a part of this group to try and help as a community member, parent, employee, and hope to get more understanding of how decisions are made and why they're made, and try and help get information out to the community in a way that maybe a community member can see it through their lens.
Great. Thank you, Carla.
I'm Joe Riley, KSD parent. My kids are all in elementary, but we're in the Kent Ridge High School strand. I want to be a part of this group to try to help build trust back with the community so that we can pass levies and bonds and fund everything we need, which is obviously what I'm hoping to gain, is that trust. And then I can't tell, is this being recorded?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Valerie Hitch. I am a middle school parent, and I wanted to be here to help close some gaps, as we talked about before, and perception from the community. And then I hope to gain a bit more understanding of how things work and how you guys do business.
Thanks, Valerie.
I'm Steve Golliff. I teach 5th grade at Jenkins Creek. My kids both went through Panther Lake, Meeker, and Kentridge. As I think has been already alluded to, I think we've got a lot of communication and trust issues that we need to somehow get hammered out. So I hope we can do that.
Yep. Thanks, Steve. One person online? Yeah, if the person online, if you could just unmute yourself and introduce yourself. 2 people. I see Peter there.
Yeah, hi, this is Peter Graves. Sorry I couldn't make it in person.
It's all good, Peter. No worries. Peter, could you just introduce yourself again like we did last time? Just talk about you're a parent or a community member, and then why you want to be a part of this work and what do you hope to gain from this?
Yeah, sorry about that. I missed that, I guess. So Peter Graves, I live up in Fairwood, so that part of the Kent School District. My wife and I have been in the school district for close to 5 years. We have a 4th grader. She's a special needs student at Carriage Crest, and mostly interested in helping. You know, I want school levies a path. I want a good, solid Kent school district. So, you know, whatever I can do to provide value, I'd love to be helpful in any way, shape, or form.
Great. Thanks, Peter. B. Apple. Could you come off and introduce yourself, please?
Hi, this is Brent Leary calling. I'm joining. I'm a third year guest teacher in the Kent School District. See, I've been a Boeing engineer for 31 years. And so I'd like to bring in some of my experience now to help mentor and coach some of the students here in the Kent School District. My daughter, she finished through Cedar Heights, Sawyer Woods, and Kent Lake. So I've been inside the Kent School District for a number of years. Some of my goals, I'm very student oriented, so I'm in favor of passing this levy and do whatever I can to help students succeed in our district.
Thank you, Brett. Appreciate you joining us. All right, we have one more person that joined us. If you could introduce yourself, please. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erica Billiard. I'm a parent and avid volunteer at both Seuss Creek and KLA. And I want to hopefully make things better. And that's about it.
Thanks, Erica. All right, well, thank you all for joining us. We're going to kind of click through some of these slides for those that weren't here last time. Well, if it works. Huh, there we go. Okay. So the purpose, this was shared in the original email back in August, as well as shared again. Just letting everyone know, this really is try to create an environment of transparency and open communication, because we need to do better as the Kent School District to meet the needs of our community. And part of that is just being open and having some transparent conversations around how we can get better as a district to support our kids, but also support, obviously, our capital measures moving forward as well. So I'm noticing that we've got some stuff in front of those. So the committee will keep students as and their needs as the focus. We're going to engage in collaborative conversations, discussions, and problem-solving sessions over the years, because this is not just a one and done. It's not just one this year. We're just going to keep on having this committee or this advisory group for years to come. Hopefully this becomes a staple, and the people that are part of this group will become very, very familiar with the work that we do in the Kent School District around capital measures, and specifically helping us support building a trusting, transparent relationship with our community again. Provide valuable input on future bond and levy measures. That's what this committee will do as well. I'm going to learn about district processes, which is something that people brought up this evening about wanting to learn a little bit more about how we do and why we do things. And then, of course, asking questions, receiving responses from staff members. At any given time, there'll be, between 4 and 7 of us sitting up here. We were just talking about a little bit earlier. We'd rather sit down in front and have much more of a close conversation, but we know we have audience members that are online. We also know that things are being filmed and all that kind of stuff. We have to have microphones in front of us. So it's not our preferred method of sitting up here talking to our audience that way, but that's unfortunately the situation we have. And so we're just going to go with that. Talked about our agreements, our norms and expectations last time, just about, thinking about what you say before you say it, staying engaged, keeping in mind the voices in the room that are not in the room. So knowing that if we have 7 or 8 people online or in person, and we've got 25,000 students and 20,000 families, that your voices are important for all families who are not in the room when we have these meetings. If you don't understand something, please just feel free to ask. This is a fairly open and informal type of conversation that we're going to be having. Be open to alternative perspectives. That's not just our community members, but also those from the district office. Listen when others are talking, just about being polite, honoring opinions, knowing that we all have our own opinions, and then respecting others. And then what do we need from this committee? So we shared this a little bit last time when we met. We're going to learn together. We're going to work together. Really about helping KSD move forward and become better. by building trusting relationships. Almost everybody who introduced themselves mentioned something about either learning something, how we do things, and also trusting and building trust so we can put ourselves in a position to regularly pass our capital measures. So that's what this group is for. We would like a commitment to this group. I sent the last email I sent out last week. One of the conversations we had before we left the last meeting was whether or not we should move to having just in-person meetings. It was shared by at least 2 people in the last meeting that we may be limiting people their participation if we just had in-person meetings, because not everyone can make it to in-person meetings all the time. And so we've decided that we will stay virtual and in person for at least the next 3 or 4 meetings until we can figure out exactly what this team committee advisory group looks like moving forward. Because what we would like to do is get out to building sites, do some tours of buildings, look at projects, talk through some different things with this particular advisory group. So this group will assist with overseeing the future and current project lists for capital measures, assist in determining project priorities. So we'll have conversations around that. We'll assist in those conversations with the goal being that, you know, as the months go on and the years go on and the learning goes on, that the group of people that are involved in this KSD Together Advisory Committee will be knowledgeable. They can be KSD ambassadors, similar to what Carla said about knowing enough to be able to share things with their community or even people that you work with. And that's important because not everybody in our community has the information. And so the more people know about what we're doing, the more they can share with others who have questions. And so that's another part of this particular group as well. So tonight, because I sent an email out and there were probably 6 or 7, 8 things on there that came out of the last meeting that people wanted to talk about, learn about, work more on. And actually, this is that list. Right here is what I sent out in the email. And we will get to these things. We'll get to every single one of these things. We're not going to get to them all tonight because this is a group that will be meeting every single month for years to come. It doesn't mean that we're not going to get to these in the next, 4 or 5 meetings. It just means that tonight we've got to start with a foundation. And I think it's been stated, not just in this meeting, but in other listening sessions and other board meetings and things like that. The things that we really need to focus on are the few things we put on here that we want to get started with. So one question we have for tonight, we're going to have a conversation about, and I'll be taking some notes. What can we do to reach broader community representation for this group? Knowing that we serve an extremely diverse population in the Kent School District, more often than not, a majority of the people that are engaged in these evening listening sessions are from one or 2 demographics, and not a true or complete representation of the population that the Kent School District serves. And so we want to talk about how can we get out and reach a broader part of our community to make sure that we feel like we have a diverse representation of our student body that we serve. So that's a conversation we want to have tonight. We need to define transparency. It's a conversation, it's a topic, it's a word that's brought up constantly. And we need to understand through the communities and parents' eyes, what does that mean? What does that look like? What does that sound like? So when people say you're not being transparent, okay, so what does that mean? What does that look like? Because I can define it and I can say that the things that I'm doing, I feel are transparent. But if the community does not see them as transparent or feel like my definition of transparency is different, we just want to make sure we have an understanding. So we're going to build, it may not finish it tonight, build a common understanding for transparency. So as a district, we can move forward together with our community to be better and be more transparent. And then what does it look like, sound like, and feel like to rebuild trust with our community? I think a couple of people brought up trust. We've had the conversation about trust, been brought up several times over the last couple of years. So that's something that we'd like to kind of start to dig into. And I know that these aren't specifically lined to capital measures, but this really is kind of the core and the foundation of the work that we probably should start with before we get into how do we prioritize projects and things like that? We need to build an understanding and appreciation for why are we doing this work? This group is meeting and coming together because we haven't been successful in these areas. And so if we can start by building a common understanding and start to work together to understand this piece, so there's a better understanding from the district's part, then as we move forward, the conversations that we have with our community in this group and outside of this group maybe can land with our community in a better way, in a different way than it's been landing with our community in the last few years. So we're going to spend our time on these pieces tonight. Again, just know that we would love this room to be full of people every time we meet. And the email went out to 322 people, and 322 people had identified themselves last spring as being interested in this group. So my executive assistant put together a list. I sent out the email, but obviously, you know, we have 8 or 9 of us on tonight, and I appreciate those that have taken the time to be here. And I understand that, you know, there's not a real good time for everyone to be available. I mean, so for some people, this is dinner time. For some people, this is family time. Some people are working. There's kids that have activities after school or in the evenings. So it's not always going to meet everyone's needs. But the fact is we need to do this, and we need to continue to do this. And so hopefully for the next 3 or 4 months, people can continue to join and build some sort of consistency around those who want to be a part of this work and help us get better and walk alongside us to do better. Because it's not healthy for our community and our district to keep failing the capital measure and having to go back out and asking our community to support us. I've been in this district for 21 years, and there was a lot of consistency and stability in our capital measures through the early 2000s and all the way up till, I would say, probably about the pandemic. And I'm not going to blame the pandemic on the fact that we haven't passed capital measures. I don't really think it was the pandemic that's causing that. But I'm hopefully in the conversations we have starting today, and again, I expect these to continue on in meetings to come, we'll start to figure out some of the things that we have either not been addressing or we've been doing wrong, so we can do right. Anybody want to say anything to that piece before I jump into like?
I'll thank you for doing the majority of the talking here. But I also want to thank everyone here in the audience and those online that took time out of their schedule to actually join us here and be a part of this. I do really appreciate that. And I think if we're working together, that's the first step towards achieving these goals. So thank you, Wade, and thank you all.
So I'm gonna ask those of you that are in person tonight and those of you online, do you have a preference of which one we start on? First one, second one, third one? Anyone? Second one? Okay. Okay, let's do it. So let's define transparency. So if those of you that are online, if you could raise your hand, then I know that your hand will be raised if you want to help us define transparency. And that can be through examples, obviously. And then anyone in this room here, you just come up to the microphone and share with us either your definition or what does that look like? What does that sound like? What does that feel like to you or to the community that you represent here? And we'll be taking notes. And we can also engage in dialogue, of course. So let's define transparency. Yeah, yep, just going up to the microphone and
Joe Riley. So I think for me, transparency, especially in the context of KSD, is business done in public with forthcoming information, right? I think in the last meeting, I think it was Mr. Buzzard that mentioned something about getting public records requests all the time, and I send public records requests a lot. And there's a lot of information I've received in public records requests that I did not get anywhere else. Wasn't on the website, wasn't available anywhere, wasn't mentioned at board meetings. And there are some things that are surprising that I learned from public records requests that wasn't being conveyed publicly. So I think for me, there's this feeling of what is being mentioned publicly is sort of filtered and is not raw truth. It is the spin that KSD leaders want me to see as opposed to what is actually happening. And so I think we need to figure out a way to, how do we be more forthcoming and open and transparent and say, this is all of the information, no spin, like here's just the raw data, here's everything we have, as opposed to framing everything in some kind of presentation or some kind of sort of sale job.
Okay.
Can I get?
Yep.
Follow-up, just a follow-up question. I think you mentioned something about making, I think you mentioned it, if you could just confirm, making those information available through the website. And maybe in some cases, board meetings, because those are, public venue.
Mhm.
I'd like to add a little bit more, like making it a little bit more layman's term, because as you know, public education system is very complex. And you could really lose yourself from all the acronyms and, all the jargons, but what is it in layman's terms? Is that kind of like what you're referring to?
Yeah, I think you have to be careful with layman's term because I agree. It's complicated and you have to be able to figure out a way to simplify it to be able to communicate. But and maybe it's just you need both to be available, right? You need here's all of the data and then here's the simplification, and other community members can weigh in and say, okay, I've looked at the data and I agree with this, or I've looked at it and I don't agree with this. And a lot of times what I see is the layman's terms, and then I records request the details, and it doesn't match what I would interpret this as. And then there's other examples, like you mentioned, of things like in work sessions, the board would receive documents that were made public and I had to records request them. Or last November, I think I had records requested information about there was the 2018 levy and 2016 project lists. And I had records requested an updated version, and there was a big internal emails back and forth about how do we get this updated and what do we send to him? And there's like a lot of internal discussion around, okay, what do we give him? How do we get the right information as opposed to just here it is, give it to them? Like public records requests for me are a months-long process. So if something happens in a meeting, I say, let me get the details, and a month and a half later, I get it. That's not transparency, right? That is long after the fact, and then I have to drudge back and say, remember this thing that happened a month ago? Here's some more details on it that weren't, given to the public upfront.
And to that end, I just want to mention, because I generally provide financial information. And if you have some time to visit the information item on the last board meeting, financial statement for July, you will notice that there is a little bit more information than the typical information that you get. It was very intentional in a sense that I'd like to provide historical view. Like say, for example, for the last 5 years, if you will say capital projects, what is the revenue and expenditure for the last 5 years for capital projects? And what are the ending fund balance? And what is the information as of, let's say, as of July? And monthly thereafter, we're going to try to do that. It was a beginning, and my plan is to continue to add more substance to it. So for example, capital projects, if once I give you the 5-year history, the next thing that I'm going to put out is what is the history of the project for the last 5 years? So slowly we're going to try to build it, and you could expect that for each fund. General fund, capital projects, ASB, debt service, and so on and so forth. Almost very consistently the same format, but all of them with historical point of view. So what I'm trying to do in the effort to be transparent to the community is trying to anticipate what the community might be looking for. in the area of general fund, for example, because, you know, as you know, they're tied to the hip to some extent, right? Because capital and general fund, you know, I'm trying to provide information about grants, LAP, title, what is the historical view, what are the uses of them, and things like that. So again, I did the first version of them in the July financial. When you see the August and the succeeding months, I'll be adding a little bit more substance to it, so that in the end, it would be a compilation of all relevant information, including historical view and things like that. So that's still in the works right now. Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. Others? Okay.
Just notes, I'm not gonna read them.
Yep.
All right, so I think transparency and accountability just go hand in hand. And so accountability in kind of my definition / point of view is having that growth mindset to admit mistakes. So kind of like Joe was saying, like, don't bury the mistakes, just tell us like, hey, we thought this, we were wrong, we're going this way instead. So I think accountability is huge. And I think clarity of messaging is huge when it comes to transparency. I think number 2 and 3 of your questions really go together a lot. So my notes kind of go back and forth, but I'll just leave that for now. And let someone else do.
Thanks, Valerie.
Steve Golliff again. I kind of put the all call out to people, what different people thought transparency meant. Somebody, I put it together, I think pretty well. What's happening at the school board meetings is that's what's leading us here, right? And the transparency at the school board meetings is lacking. Back in the spring, I mean, I attended board meetings where board members were asking questions and there were pretty much people refusing to answer questions. We've heard many decisions made at the school board meetings, or I should say presented at the school board meetings, but the decisions are being made elsewhere. And then when people ask questions about that, the answer is, well, that was an executive session, we can't talk about that. You can even go to last week, was it last week, the superintendent chat?
Yep.
I watched it on video the next day. And there were quite a few questions where people didn't really get a straight answer. And from what I heard from somebody who was there, his impression was there were some people that left that meeting maybe less happy than when they arrived, because they're trying to get information and then they're told, you know, that's locked up in executive session. Executive session, as I understand it, the purpose is to protect the privacy if there's a problem with a staff member or something like that, or a legal problem. But what's happening is it sure looks like there are decisions being made in executive session, and then there's no explanation as to how those decisions got to be made, right? The thinking that went into it or whatever. So I think that's one important part. And what's happening, what somebody pointed out to me was, what seems to be happening is that lack of transparency is what people are reacting to when they vote, right? And so then we end up with the situation we're in. Somebody, and this is similar to what we've already heard, somebody said telling the full truth, not just parts, admitting mistakes. There should not be any gap between words and action. Providing all of the documentation on the board docs, not some of them. Those are a couple of the keys. Let me scroll down here. And I think what somebody else already said, you know, there's public business being done, but it's being presented in public, but the business and all the, I guess the sausage making, for lack of a better word, is not being done in public. a few months ago, I think it might have been at the second levy listening session, I asked if there was a reserve study put together for each building so that if we're going to talk about which projects need to be done, is there a list of, a reserve study for each building so we can see, what things should be next in line? I think that was 2 months ago that I was asked about that, and I heard it was in progress, and I asked a month later, it was still in progress. It's another month later. I don't know if there's such a thing yet or not put together.
When you say reserve study, what do you mean by that?
A reserve study, like each building, here are all the, somebody said 72
All the projects
thing
or all
projects,
the,
whatever, right? Right, every building has some kind of boiler system
Sure.
and carpeting and paint and roof and whatever, right? And all those things have an expected lifespan, right?
Yeah.
So we should be able to predict pretty easily when those things are going to need to be replaced, and we would need to put up a levy to put up new roofs or
Yep.
put up whatever, right?
Yep.
Okay, well, I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter. Online.
Yes, thank you. So just a little context for me. So I work in the political politics and public affairs space. And so I work in elections, big and small, stuff in lots of other states, lots of elections in the state, see a lot of public polling, public opinions. And what I see consistently is there's a mistrust in public institutions across the board. It's now mostly it's marginal, but it still can be enough to make a big effect. So when we see, as voters, when voters see levies appear on every ballot that they receive in the mail, it's almost adding fuel to the fire. They're unsure why they're seeing a bond measure or capital measure every single time they get a ballot. When they see their property taxes going up every year, they falsely think that's probably because of all these bond measures that they consistently are voting for. And when cost of living goes up, the things that people vote for are pocketbook issues. So stuff like, schools and things, if you don't have kids in public schools, that tends to be something you vote no on, right? So for me to be transparent, what I think, and I receive all the information that y'all send out. Typically they're around election time, right? You see every school put on their little boards, vote yes on the bond measure. You see the school teachers out there waving signs, right? And this stuff's all great. But that's always within, a month of the election and then nothing. So, I think to be transparent, how I would talk with voters and talk with constituents in this matter would be, how do we educate people when they're not receiving a ballot about what the Kent School District is doing, how the Kent School District is improving lives of everybody in this area, how, if we have world-class schools, that's going to attract world-class jobs, that's going to increase your property values, which are all great things, right? That's truly raising all boats. And a lot of that stuff just isn't being communicated. I came down here from the Bellevue School District, and I wouldn't say they're doing a much better job, but certainly it feels a lot more connected, like the school district and the folks up there connected with, hey, we move here for the schools, and I don't really get that, in this area. And I think that could certainly be a big part of why people want to move this area, right? There's massive companies that are headquartered here. And, so I think that just for the sake of transparency, I think we just need to do a better job of communicating with people outside of the time they actually receive their ballot and make a decision as to whether or not they want to support this measure, right? And that can be done in, lots of different ways, public events, forums, events, whatever it is. Like, I think that would be a really good, strong measure to do, talk with people, educate them. And then, once you receive a ballot, obviously then everything else gets turned back on. But I think that would be probably the best first step. How do you communicate with people that the value that they're voting for consistently is actually something that they should be paying for?
No, thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. This is good stuff. This is good. I know some of you have longer lists than you. Valerie, Steve, Joe, anybody, Erica, anything? Yeah.
Few to the list. I think the levy issues that you mentioned, they started several superintendents ago. They really got fuel to the fire, started with Watts, and that has continued. So there's a lot that is starting at the top with both the executive leadership and the board, that there's a massive lack of trust in you guys, and the board to make good decisions at this point. And the board is viewed as rubber stamping everything and fighting within themselves. So that's really a problem transparency wise, and building trust wise. One example was Tuesday at the conversations with the superintendent. We were told to email you guys, but it's a fairly well-known fact in the community that the superintendent doesn't respond to emails when people voice their concerns. So things like that also add fuel. Like, it's like, what's the point when nothing's ever responded to? And I know I mentioned to you, Dr. Behringer, and to Superintendent Bello after the meeting on Tuesday, that one good example of a transparency issue was how the lead in the water issues was handled. Because even if it wasn't intended to be a lack of transparency, the way it was handled was just a massive screw up. And it made it look really opaque. It made it look like you guys were hiding things, or that you didn't want to answer questions, or that you just shoved all the questions on Gordon Cook, which was crazy and unfair. So there's many examples all the time that add up to a lack of transparency and a lack of trust. And that's really difficult when it's thing upon thing upon thing. And my view as an MBA who has looked at kind of the global view of this from more of a company perspective is that this is a cultural problem at this point. This KSD has a cultural problem with the way things work, the way people are treated, the way the board works, and the way the interaction works. So I don't know exactly how to fix that, but I fear that probably some of the top leadership needs to step down, and we need some fresh leadership and perspectives. That's just my point.
All right, thanks, Erica.
It's Carla Lance.
Yep.
From a parent and employee and community member, as far as transparency, I don't know that it's always transparency as it is, how do we communicate? I get so many email, like my unopened emails is over 25,000. I get at least 100 new emails a day. So if the Kent School District sends me something important, chances are I'm not going to see it. And I know I'm not the only person that's like that. I know lots of people are just inundated with emails, and the same with text. And quite frankly, when I see KSD come up on my caller ID, I don't answer because I know it's about my son and I don't want to deal with it. I will listen to the email, talk to him about it, formulate the plan. So and that's as somebody, I mean, I'm a college educated 50-something that has years of customer service experience and years of service with the public. and it's overwhelming for me. Now imagine some of our people who have recently immigrated and don't have the years of trying to figure this stuff out, and let alone figure it out in a translated message. And how do we get the important information at the important times to the right people so that it's seen, I think is a big part of why things are misinterpreted, why things seem like they're not out there, why things seem like they're hard to find. Because even at the level that I'm at, some of this stuff is overwhelming and hard to find and hard to see and hard to figure out. And we've got a whole bunch of our district that operates at a different level that makes that exponentially harder to figure out.
Do you have a suggestion on that? I mean,
Nope.
I understand. So like, you're a bus driver.
Yeah.
You get 100 emails a day.
Uh-huh. And that's just my personal email.
You get 100 emails a day on your personal email from KSD?
No, I don't even look at my KSD email, quite honestly,
Oh.
because I get things like the coffee cart at the admin building and all kinds of
I
stuff.
don't even get that.
That has probably been a couple of years since I read my KSD email. When we have a training or something that we have to go online and do, then Justin says, Carla, you have an email. Sweet, I'll go look at it. And then I deal with that. I probably have 10,000 in my KSD email that, because I've been here 11 years, that I don't have the time to go in and delete them. But even on my personal email is where I have 25,000. I mean, we are an email prevalent society, and I get it. I don't have a solution for it, but I think it's something we need to figure out. We've done the phone calls, we've done the text, we've done the emails, and things still aren't getting through on the communication side. And I don't know how to fix it.
I think you're bringing up a good point, and I was just sitting here thinking that, I think every district leader has a different interpretation or a slightly different interpretation of transparency. And some may believe, because we share a whole bunch of information through a website or an email all the time, or robocalls or whatever, that we're being transparent with everything that's going on. And I'm sensing and feeling, and it's my opinion, that is not necessarily the definition of transparency based on what we're hearing this evening, which is the important part, is that was my belief that I would find out, which didn't take more than a handful of people sharing that. And again, I wouldn't say it's our definition of transparency, but sharing lots of information. But if people aren't reading it, or they can't consume it, or they're not able to, digest it, then it's not doing any good. We're missing people, whether you're a staff member, a community member, parent, you speak English or you don't speak English. So that's another piece of this piece, which even might lead to the question one, which we're not going to jump on right now because we want to finish transparency, is that we're missing the boat on how we're even reaching the rest of our community to be engaged in opportunities like this as well.
Absolutely.
Because I send out an email. Yes, you can translate that email, but I'm sending it in English. 322 people, and I know there's people on that list that are parents that English may not be their first language.
And now I'm wondering if somewhere in my emails, I was one of the 322, because I said I wanted to be a part of it and I never got an email, but I bet you I did get an email. I bet you it's in there somewhere and I missed it. So.
Which is why, too, it's like, I sent the emails out to the 322 people that said that, but it's on the website. And like, if people want to be involved in this and they're not here and they didn't get an email, like Joe reached out to me, he didn't get an email. I'm like, yeah, come be a part of this, jump in. Because again, obviously when you send it to 322 people and 8 or 9 people show up,
Something's missed.
There's a need there. And I had several people say, hey, I'm not gonna be able to make it tonight, but still not 300 of them. So, and again, therein lies the other piece, is it the The forum, is it the space? Is it, what is it that we're not doing right? Because I've been here for a long time and I can tell you through Vargas and Watts days, we didn't do listening sessions. In fact, if you ever got anything from those guys, it was a top down, stand in front of a screen and tell you what you want to know and then no time for questions. That's what that was. So the last 2 years with bonds and levies and listening sessions and boundary work and all kind of stuff and creating these spaces, we never did that before in Kent School District. But again, but they're not well attended either still. And so maybe this isn't the right way either. Maybe there's a different way. So, but I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, I appreciate being vulnerable to share how many emails you have in your inbox as well.
Input.
Oh, yeah, Brett.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, this is Brent Leary. So regarding transparency, my comment is going to be kind of in line with the transparency and as well as the first bullet that you had on the list is how you can what you can do to best try to get your agendas through to the community. So to me, those my comments are going to be kind of in line with both of those. So I have some suggestions in terms of if you've sent out 300 mailers and then you're only getting maybe 8 or 10 responses. So I would like to suggest get some feedback, get some information with the PTA. So connect with them. Every school has a PTA. All parents want involvement with their child in the school district. You're going to get 100% of parent involvement. All parents want their children to succeed. They're not hearing your inputs. They're not hearing what your issues are. So connect with every school PTA should have information about this meeting and any future meetings. Not only the PTAs for each school, but I suggest there are many businesses within the Kent School District. Many of our many businesses, like I said, I've been a Boeing engineer and I've worked in the Kent and Renton area. I really don't get any inputs. And a lot of my coworkers have children within the Kent School District. We're not getting any input. So just a simple information mailing, connect with our business communities to try to get some community business involvement. All of our businesses, it's to their advantage. They want children in our Kent School District to succeed. Talented kids within our district, that just amplifies the amount of education opportunities within our district. Where the business community, they're not seeing your issues. So those two, I think if you were to team up with the business community much more and the PTAs much more, I'm sure you would fill that room. Some other comments that I have are that generally what most of the public, when they see, and I did hear some input already, that most people normally get your inputs through a mailer, through the mail. And so the vast majority of the public, they're concerned about property taxes going up. I think the majority, though, of our citizens within our district, we're okay with a property tax increase if you can show that the house is on fire, that there is a serious need where those monies are going, and what advantage that putting $500 million into property tax, what is that going to do? And so if the house is on fire and the community knows about it, of course, I'm sure you're going to get a lot of support from our community supporting that. But just a general mail thing and just a brochure in the mail with very little input or feedback, or I'm guessing again, I can't answer for everyone in our district why there's been a couple of failed levies in the past, but I'm going to guess that most of those levies did not pass because there was not that much in the way of the transparency issue. We're getting brochures, you're doing that, but where there needs to also be feedback from the community. So I think that would kind of, these town halls, I think this is good. But again, there needs to be better communication with our teaming up with our business community, with even the churches within our community. Everybody wants children to succeed. Everybody. You're not going to get anyone saying that they don't agree with that. The issue is, how do you get your information to the people that will help you? Those people are not hearing your words and your issues. Churches, businesses, PTAs, if you were to team up with those folks, your room would be filled every session, in my opinion.
Thank you, Brad. I appreciate that. Yeah, just a little bit on the PTAs. I would love to say that every school has a PTA. They unfortunately do not. Not every school in the district has a PTA. We've been battling back as far as PTA growth since the pandemic. We are better off now than we were when we first came out of the pandemic, but we're nowhere where we were with PTA participation prior to the pandemic. I'm not making that as an excuse. I think there's an opportunity to get this information in front of PTAs. One of the things that we ask our principals to do is to share our informational campaign at a PTA meeting in September or October. So hopefully all of our principals have done that already, as we're only 7 days away from or 8 days away from the election. But yeah, it would be nice to have more PTA support. And as far as businesses and churches and things like that, you're absolutely right. We send our mailers out when it comes to capital measures to all the business addresses that have been that are in the Kent area. And then as far as churches go, we have, I think, over 30 different church emailing addresses that we send out the information as well via email. Now, again, it goes back to the communication modality that we're using, and is that the best way to get the information out? I definitely believe there's some things to be done in around communications to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our community, because not everyone, receives information from the district through email, or only through a mailer, or only through a text message. Some get it through Instagram and Facebook and other social media outlets as well. So I think the biggest piece that I'm taking from yours, which you're absolutely right, is getting more feedback. What can we do differently? Getting more feedback from our community, because we are missing some of those pieces. So I appreciate your perspective on that. Steve?
Steve Golliff again. So on the, and again, this is all mixed together, right? Goes together. On the attendance at these meetings point, I attended all 3 levy listening sessions, and this is my second one of this group. And I'll be honest, I was a little hesitant to come to this one and or continue with this one. The last levy, or the last, levy listening session, I just tuned in online, and it seemed like kind of pretty similar to the other ones. A friend of mine watched that whole listening session on the recording, and she sent an email or a message to me, and she said, I just listened to the end of the listening session. She wanted to know who was speaking at the end. And then she noted that he told people to get their tails in here. He used the word crap, and he said something about the district going to hell in a handbasket. She said she was a little shocked. And the last 15 minutes, if you're wondering why maybe people don't come in, there's a lot of reasons, obviously, but one might be, the end of that last listening session, I was looking at my wife while we were watching it, and I'm like, what is happening here? Because it felt very angry. And I don't know how we're getting people to attend any meetings with anger or threats. I don't think it's a good strategy. I will say on my school email, there was an email from the communications department, I guess. And in that email, it was a reminder about the levy again, and it included a video. And people are watching the video, and people are kind of interpreting the video the same way as opposed to selling what's going on, we're being threatened with things that might happen. And this happened back in the spring too. It was, if the levy doesn't pass, then all these things are going to happen. And it turned out that I don't think too many of those things did happen in the end. So, so I think we just need to be real careful about how we communicate at these meetings if we want people to show up. You know what I mean?
You mind if
People
I
aren't-
respond to you?
No, and there have been a few responses to different things, and you can respond, but I think what we're trying to do is get a definition here and get examples of what transparency is and what it's not, and how we build trust and how we don't. So
Part of the transparency piece was we had many community members, as well as the previous consultant, as well as many staff members saying, we don't know what happens if this levy doesn't pass. You need to share that. You've never shared that. How
Oh,
come we
I didn't-
don't share that? So we shared that.
yeah,
So there might be a handful of people out there going, oh my gosh, I can't believe that they made a video that says, you know, that they made it like threatening. It's not threatening. It's a fact. I mean, why would I wouldn't threaten people. That's ridiculous. But
well,
it's the truth.
that's, okay, I'm just telling you how people perceive it.
I understand that.
So we need to account for that.
There are some
right?
people that perceive it that way. There are others perceive it as, thank you for sharing that. I did not know that was the
Sure.
impact of a failed levy.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. There's always going to be a variety of
Of course.
perceptions. We want to get
course.
the largest number of people
For sure.
possible.
For sure.
So,
Thank you. Others, yeah, Erica. Yeah.
The PTA issue.
Sure.
So I think sharing the committee information out to PTAs is a great idea. PTAs, we have our own, communication networks, and that would be a really effective way to, get people engaged maybe. PTAs also tend to be a little more homogenous, which is not great, but at least it's another way to push out that communication, and also pushing it out to principals, not just on the levy issue. The principals talk about the levy, but pushing out opportunities like this to engage, for the school to send text messages, emails. Hey, we have this opportunity. You're invited. That would be a really good thing to do. For me personally, I know we're kind of jumping to community representation. Me personally, I jumped on both of our school community Facebook pages and put out the I put out your email, screenshots of your email, and invited people to come. So hopefully we'll get some engagement there, but it is difficult. I also talked to Sue's Creek's multilingual education teacher, and I'm getting some feedback from her on how to engage some of our multilingual families on this. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes, you're right about the PTA piece. And again, just because we ask principals to share information doesn't mean it always goes out the way that we think it might go out. And so principals have a lot going on. There's a lot of different communications they send out. They put a lot of things in weekly news or monthly newsletters or weekly newsletters. So I think being more intentional about that, I think being intentional about reaching out to each of the PTAs about this opportunity. I think maybe finding some other ways to do that as well, whether it be something flashing on the front of the website, like, hey, are you looking to be involved? Here's an opportunity. Because there's a lot of things that, even though it's on there, you gotta look and scroll down, and you might want to have to dig into things a little bit, maybe more. But I think that's a good idea, for sure. All right, Valerie, it's 7, you're the last one.
So on that kind of note around who do we listen to? I'm just gonna be brutally honest and say, if it's not about my kid, I'm not reading it till later, and maybe I'll read it later. So when you talk about like principals, right? Like I read the messages from my principal, but when they're like the page of text, or on Saturday, I wrote down, I got 4 emails. Now granted, that's because I share an account with my husband. 4 emails, 2 texts, and a phone call on a Saturday that told me to vote. That's a bit much. But the email from my principal says, hey, do you know like that we got our lines in our parking lot restriped recently? And here's how it's making it safer for your kid. And by the way, that was part of the like capital levy that I listened to. So I'm like, okay, 4 emails, whatever, like stop with the please vote. Go through what matters to the people who are in the room, in the schools, in the community, right? So that's kind of like, it's not really transparency, trust, it kind of like everything all together. And then just one more example, because you talked about why people aren't showing up to this. And I think it has to do also with not just what everyone else has said about the atmosphere that's been created in the board meetings, which are public. You guys need to know that our perception, like I didn't know who any of you were like before this, right? And it doesn't matter if I'm sitting in like middle school going, hey, my parking lot needs to be restriped. So it's the admin as a whole that is kind of like our perception. And I think it's like that when you invited everyone to this meeting, the technology has to be clean enough for us to get the invites. This is really, really, really stupid, but like Hotmail, Yahoo, Google, they all put in like spam filters recently. They went to spam. So like, I didn't find it till after the thing was done. And then it said you had to apply. And I was like, oh, I already missed the deadline to apply. I guess I can't do it. And then the email said, and you might not get in anyway. So I was like, oh, forget it. I'm not going to come. But then you reached out directly. So just kind of those things that like make it easy for me to see how I participate might do wonders for the rest of our community as well.
Thank you, Valerie. More question on? I don't see a hand. Oh, there it is. Seattle Opera Zoom 2. I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah, can you guys hear?
Yep.
Sorry, my phone defaults to my work Zoom. So I'm Kathleen Trott, and my daughter goes to Middle Ridge. Canyon Ridge, sorry. And I think one of the things that I continually struggle with, not just here, just so we're clear, with all schools, including colleges, transparency-wise, is the ease that I can find and then internally navigate through the information. So a really good example is there's an ASB fee that I knew I had to pay. I could not find the place on the website to pay it. The teacher sent out a thing saying I needed to pay it, and they used Final Forms, which is fantastic, but you can't pay through Final Forms. And nowhere in there was there a click here to pay. And I even tried to search it on the website, and what came up for me was the application to waive the fee, not to pay the fee. And I understand that website infrastructure and the multiple levels of Blackboard and I get that all of that is a bother for teachers, and it's new technology that's being developed and we're all learning together. I totally buy all that. But if I can't really easily find my answer or engage with my kid's school, I shut down. I wanted to pay that fee, and I was like, it's $15. If they really need it from me, they'll nag me about it, I guess, because I spent 30 minutes trying to pay it. And I think that translates up to a lot of things, that when I can't on a website really clearly see all of the sports schedules or the Spirit Week events that are planned. There's communication happening between the parents and the the students and the kids, and the teachers and the kids, and that's really, really great. But as a parent, I need to be able to access that information easily also without having to log in through 3 separate things. And I think that what I'm getting at long-windedly, sorry, is that when that kind of information that I have to have about my kid is so labor intensive for me to find, I think that a lot of parents disengage then. And then they say, oh, well, Levy, yeah, sure, I can't even get a website that works properly. I can't even pay a fee. Why should I care about this levy when this thing that matters immediately to my kid's school and my kid is difficult to do?
Thank you, Kathleen. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Just a story for myself. I work in the district and I have kids in the district, and my daughter was sick last week, and it took me 10 minutes to find the email to the attendance office at Kent Ridge, which should be right there. I'm like, attendance policy, attendance, call in for illness. And it just tells me like, if your kid's sick, this ill, I'm like, so I just need the email. So
yeah.
Finally.
Well, like I said, it's not just a problem of this school district. If that makes any of us feel better, universities have terrible websites. You know, I've battled my way through the school websites for my entire educational career and both of my kids', but one would think that by now we could maybe be making it a little bit more user-friendly.
No, I appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I say one thing real quick?
Sure.
So I think another piece of this, which sort of gets to the third point and the first point, is listening sessions are not useful if there's no action taken from them. And I'll be honest that all of the feedback today is great. I have zero confidence that it will lead to anything because I've seen the surveys, I've seen the listening sessions, I've seen the previous meetings. There was a forum last year that I emailed asking what actions were taken out of it and got no response. Like there's nothing about any of this. So I see you listening. Listening is not enough. And I think that's part of the reason why nobody is here, is because they have other things to do. And if the choice is sacrifice something of their personal lives to do nothing that has no outcome, they're going to choose personal lives. And I'm in the same boat as Steve. I fought really hard to come here because I had to sacrifice a soccer game that I coached today to be able to come give feedback. And the question was, do I want to sacrifice that if the feedback isn't going to be listened to? And I chose to again, and I will continue to provide feedback again. But that's the biggest reason why you're getting no participation, is that no one has confidence that any of it will lead to anything. And I think that needs to change. There needs to be very vocal, visible changes that come out of the feedback as opposed to just listening.
I agree. All right. Thank you on that note. The next meeting, let me just click through here real quick. Oops. November 25th, 6 to 7 p.m. We'll probably come back and revisit some of these pieces. The transparency piece, I think is pretty good, but I don't think we're completely done with that, but I feel pretty good about the examples you guys gave. So I want to come back to that, and then I want to come back to the 2 pieces about the trust, which was kind of interwoven into some of this, which makes sense as it would be. And then how do we reach out to a broader community, which was also shared in several pieces in here, which we'll start doing between now and the next meeting. To Joe's point, I don't disagree with him. I wouldn't say that 100% we've never acted on anything we've ever listened to. I wouldn't say that. But I can understand that there's concern and frustration from the community if they don't readily see actions every single time we do listening sessions. So I will validate that. So appreciate everyone's time tonight. Again, you can always reach out in between meetings. The one thing I did adjust, and I appreciate, I think Joe, you caught this one. I appreciate that. I don't know why I had my numbers wrong on the EPO levy. It said 25-26. It's actually 27-28. So I apologize for that. I fixed that. So if you look at those are just the upcoming capital measures. There's a lot right there 3 years down the road. And that's assuming this passes in next week, Because if not, then we'll have to go out next year in 2025 for a 2026 piece for a 2-year levy, just to get us through to get back onto track here. So, but lots of things to talk about. I appreciate your candidness this evening. I appreciate your open and honesty, and that's important. I know that, you know, we're not going to make everybody happy, but we're going to do our best to do a lot better than we have been. And so if I didn't want this to happen, I wouldn't sit here and take this from the community every month. I'm going to tell you right now, because there's some of us, I mean, we're sitting up here every single month. I mean, I would love to share the love with some others to be able to sit up here and hear some of this too, but it's the right thing to do, and we will do better. And I've said it and it's recorded. So we'll see some actions between now and the next meeting. Appreciate all your time this evening. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you all.